Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Dharma Helper and this is DHReviews. This is my Season 1 Episode 3 review of Agent Carter. If you missed my Agent Carter live stream where I reviewed the first 2 episodes, there will be a link in the description of this video as well as an annotation behind me on the screen. I encourage you to check that out. I had a real fun time talking with you guys about the episode and watching it live, and I hope you did as well. Also, if you want to take a look at any of the other shows I review, I did a Gallivant review this week, which will be in the description of this video, as well as my Gotham reviews, Constantine reviews, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reviews, and Scorpion reviews. I'll put those in the link in the description as well, and you can check those out if you're interested. That being said, Season 1, Episode 3 of Agent Carter was called Time and Tide, and in this episode is a kind of a direct continuation of the pilot episode where Agent Carter and Jarvis are investigating the symbol that Leet Brannis drew in the sand at the end of the premiere, and trying to figure out where the weapons are and what Leviathan is. And so they continue their investigation, and the SSR continues its investigation. And the two of them sort of continue to clash, and the SSR is continuing to look for this woman that's, one step ahead of them, and that's a huge sort of turning point in this episode. That takes a turning point in this episode with the whole thing that happened at the very end of the episode. And so that's kind of the story of the episode, is trying to balance these two investigations and stay one step ahead of each other, and that sort of struggle between Agent Carter and Jarvis and the SSR. And so there are 3 characters that I wanted to talk about in this episode, and the first one obviously will be Agent Carter. And in this episode we get more of what we saw in the premiere, of her pushing people away and keeping people at a distance. She does that with her friend Angie, and that really offends Angie, and she doesn't understand, why are you keeping secrets and why are you pushing me away and stuff. And what really hits home for Agent Carter in this episode is her, as a direct result of her investigation alongside the SSR, she can't take that one guy's shift, and so he's forced to work that night, and then they obviously catch that big brutish sort of guy, and then at the end of the episode the agent is transporting the prisoner, and he's ambushed and killed. So that kind of hits home for her in this episode, and I think that's going to be a huge turning point for her in understanding what her role is and what her capabilities are, and what the line is that she's crossing here, going in direct opposition of the SSR, and also how far she can keep people away. What was interesting to me was her conversation with Jarvis about Jarvis's past, and how she was very keen on figuring out what's going on with Jarvis. And I'm wondering again if she's opening up a little bit more and trying to get to know Jarvis a little bit better, and work well with Jarvis and be friends with Jarvis. To me, those two work really well together, and they have a lot of chemistry. And so the idea that they're trying to open each other up and look inside and try to figure out, who are you, who am I, that sort of worked well for me in the episode, and I was entertained by that in the episode. And I think that's a huge benefit for those two characters, to be able to get that close and be friends and work through each other's problems. And that kind of wraps up my thoughts on Agent Carter. I think we're going to see her sort of, continue to open up and get past this whole thing with Steve Rogers, Captain America, and, open up to become more of a friendly person and to let more people in. I think, again, the 2 big things that affected her in this episode were number one, well, three big things that affected her in this episode were number one, her relationship with Angie, which they had a funny scene in there, which it looked like, Angie was leaving her room and she was in her robe, and then the landlady came by and she sort of had that look on her face like, oh, what's going on here? So that sort of relationship between Angie and Peggy, I think that's going to play a huge role for her in helping her to open up, helping her to tell Angie at least, about her life and about her problems. And the second thing was her relationship with Jarvis, where she is treated as an equal and as an agent, and where she gets to do the things that she wants to do and that she was able to do in the war. And then on the flip side of that, she has a companion and a compatriot to do these things with. I think that's important in that, in that line of work, if you're alone, it has an impact on you. It has an effect on you. So that she has Jarvis to lean on, I think is going to play a huge part in her this season. And the final thing, again, was the death of that one SSR agent. It's going to have an impact on her and what she decides to do and how far she decides to go in pursuing Leviathan and protecting Howard. So that's Agent Carter for this episode. And the second person I wanted to talk about was Daniel Sosa, however you pronounce that. And the main thing I wanted to cover in this episode about Daniel was the line that the other agent had about, Peggy's not going to give up a red, white, and blue shield for an aluminum crutch. And I wanted to bring that up because that hit me a little bit hard. The idea that Daniel is at a disadvantage because he's got to live up to this hulking sort of red, white, and blue patriotic type hero. And to me, that wasn't the point of Captain America to begin with. And that wasn't the charm of Captain America as it relates to Peggy. What Peggy fell in love with, I think, was the man that Captain America was at his core, at his heart. The man Steve Rogers. She fell in love with Steve Rogers and his selflessness and his ability to be compassionate and that sort of aspect of Steve. And I think Daniel has that in spades. And Daniel has way more in common with Steve Rogers and with Captain America than he realizes and that people give him credit for. And hopefully that's a huge part of his season, is recognizing that he's got more talent than people give him credit for, and he's got a lot more to give than people give him credit for. In the same way that Peggy is treated, I believe, in the SSR, sort of Daniel has that sort of comparison as well, where people are not giving him as much credit as he deserves. And I think that's going to bring the two of them together, as well as, like I said, Daniel's compassion and his personality rather than his outward appearance or his physical capabilities. He did vow revenge on whoever it was that killed the other guy, and whoever it was that called in that, because Jeeves had to call in that they found the gadgets, and so Jeeves called it in, and so Sosa believes that whoever called it in was behind the hit, and it was a targeted hit. And so that's going to be a direct conflict for him, figuring out that Agent Carter was behind this and that Jeeves was behind this in that respect, and then taking his anger and not thinking clearly and going after Jeeves and going after Agent Carter when he should be going after Leviathan. So I think that's going to play a huge role coming up here in his season, is when he finds out what Peggy did and what Jarvis did. Because because he's so enraged by this and he's so emotionally invested in this, he's not going to stop. He's going to find out that it was Jeeves. This sort of thing, that when you lose a compatriot, when you lose a coworker, when you lose a close friend like that, it motivates you in a way that nothing else really can. And Daniel's motivation is just going to be through the roof. And he's going to find out what Jeeves did. And he's not going to be thinking clearly when he exacts his revenge. And that's going to be something I think that's going to be very interesting to keep an eye out for. The third character that I wanted to speak about in terms of this review is Jarvis. I keep saying Jeeves, don't I? It's Jarvis. Jarvis, in this episode, we learned that he was accused of treason. The treason charge was then dropped, and then he began to work with Howard Stark. And so we learn in this episode that the treason charge, which SSR tries to use against him, and Peggy sort of distrusts him kind of because of it and can't work with him because of it, so he kind of tells her the reason behind the treason charge is that his wife was and still is Jewish, and so during the war he had to sort of forge papers to get her out and to get her to safety. And he went to mail the papers and file the papers, and he got caught, and Howard kind of bought him out because they were friends, and bought him his freedom pretty much and swept that under the rug. And so the thing I wanted to talk about Jarvis is, again, his commitment to his family is going to be a huge part of his season. At what point can he strike that balance no longer of keeping his family, his wife, safe, and doing the work with Peggy for Howard and doing all this work? At what point is he going to have to choose between the two, and what the consequences of that are going to be? He's a very sort of domestic guy where he's, doing all the laundry and all this stuff, and he's a very soft-spoken, sweet guy. He's a quiet man, but there was a rage in his eyes and an anger in his eyes during that interrogation scene that I think we're going to see coming up here in later episodes. Jarvis, to me, is probably one of the most dangerous characters in the show because he's so quiet and calm and unassuming and very dapper, and in the way that he carries himself, you almost forget that he was actually in the war. And he's a soldier as much as anybody else, as much as Peggy or anybody in the SSR. Jarvis as well was a soldier, and that soldier is going to come out. You back him into a corner like that, like they tried to do. You threaten his family like that, like they tried to do, and that soldier's going to come out. And the consequences for that are going to be interesting to take a look at. Other than that, that's all I kind of wanted to talk about in terms of characters and what I'm looking forward to for those three characters. And it looks like Howard's going to be back very, very shortly here. And I want to see more from Howard and what he's up to and what he can bring to the table and what light he can shed on things. So let me talk now about my overall thoughts on the episode and how things were handled and where things are headed. I think this episode really set the stakes more than the premiere did. With the death of that one agent, we understand now that this, as much as Peggy understands, we as an audience now understand that this is not a game, that the stakes are very high, and that there are very dangerous people working here for very dangerous means. And I think that's going to come to light in future episodes. I did want to touch on the SSR finding was it Leet Brandis' hotel room or the other guy's hotel room that he found with the typewriter from Fringe in it. And so they are very, very hot on the trail of these Leviathan guys. And that's going to be dangerous for them because as motivated as Sosa is to find out who made the call and all this stuff, everyone in the SSR was affected by that death, and they're similarly motivated. And so that's going to play a huge part in the rest of the season, is the brute force of the SSR coming out. You know, you got that one agent who just beats the crap out of people for interrogations, and you got the guy from Boardwalk Empire who is the leader of all that, and who can, you know, rally his troops and say, he actually does rally his troops in this episode. He says, be vigilant, I'm not going to lose any more of you guys. And so they're going to be on the warpath. And this episode really sets that tone. I tried not to cough. And so this episode really sets that tone of getting the SSR riled up and making them on the warpath, and then Leviathan is on the warpath, and you know, Peggy has got her resolve. And so that those three forces in this episode are really, really bubbling and boiling to the surface here. And that's going to spill over into future episodes. So that kind of covers my thoughts on all of this episode. I really enjoyed the episode. I think it was very well done, and it set up a lot of things. It set up the relationship between Peggy and Angie. It set up the relationship between Peggy and Jarvis. It set up Daniel's motivation in the future and potential conflicts with Peggy there. It set up the SSR getting really riled up and giving them their mission statement for the rest of the season. And it established that Leviathan, which we learned was actually, we talked about this on the stream, how Leviathan might be Russian in origin and all this stuff. So we learned that they were Russian in origin. These guys that served in the same unit all died at this one battle, and they're coming back. And they're not necessarily dead. They're coming back and working for Leviathan. And we saw that guy kill the agent. So Leviathan in this episode, as I said, was established as being very dangerous and very difficult to deal with. So with all that being said, I enjoyed this episode very much. I hope you did as well. If you enjoyed this review, I would appreciate it if you left a thumbs up, so that I knew, you guys enjoy this kind of stuff. And it really helps me out, really helps the channel grow. Share this video, get this video to your friends and stuff so that we can grow the channel. If you have anything you wanted to add, hit me up on the comment section down below or on Twitter at the DHReviews. I'd love to talk with you guys about the episode, about the series, about any of the other series that I'm reviewing. And with that all being said, my Gallivant episode 3 and 4 review will be tomorrow, and that'll round out the week. And then next week will be a little bit more of a normal schedule. Agent Carter is on break next week, so there won't be an Agent Carter review, but everything else I think is coming back, so that'll be next week. Will be Gallivant, Constantine, Gotham, and Scorpion, those 4. With that said, I've been Dharma Helper. This has been DHReviews. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned.